Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, and today we have with us another special guest, and he goes by the name of Sean Pitts. Now, Sean Pitts is the director of OEM Sales for GCX Corporation. What is OEM Sales, you ask? Well, to find that out, you're going to have to listen to the episode. As always, we do our best to bring you innovative guests that are doing things just a little bit differently in the medical sales space, and I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, Sean, how are we doing today?
Good. How you doing?
No complaints. Why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Sean Pitts. I am the director of OEM Sales for GCX Corporation, which is a healthcare solutions company that provides adjunct devices for medical device products on the market.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. You know, we have a lot of people listening that have no idea what that means and they're not familiar with the terminology. What exactly is OEM sales?
Sure. So OEM acronym is original equipment manufacturer. So in this case, that refers to the medical device company themselves. And then we are a manufacturer of, as I mentioned, supporting components or devices, which we'll get into, that support their medical device in the field. In the case of what we do, the OEM would be, for your listeners that are either in the space or want to get into the space, these would be pretty famous customers like Stryker or Abbott, Arthrex, some of the major medical device companies that are out there work with us.
Okay, so let's run with that example. So sure. Stryker makes a product, and then your company makes a complementary product to Stryker's product. Yes.
That's yes. Yeah.
And then where does the sales rep, where does the Stryker sales rep for that product interact with the sales rep for you guys? How does that work?
Sure. Yeah. So generally speaking, the sales reps for Stryker would not engage with us. We would typically engage with Stryker's engineering, product management, product development, or marketing teams, or even their R&D teams. So essentially, if we just use an example, let's just call it device A. They decide to create a device. That device is going to have certain needs relative to us. It might be transportation, it might need to be on a cart. It might need to be something that allows it to be moved or bent or put over the patient or maneuvered through a hospital or a doctor's office or what have you, to provide either additional functionality, transport, whatever the case may be. And that will be very specific to the type of device and the application area that it's going to be used. So my sales team would engage with the medical device company, in this case, for our example, Stryker. And generally speaking, the Stryker salespeople, just to bring it full circle back to your initial question, they would technically sell our device that we had manufactured for Stryker as generally a combination product with their device and ours as a complete solution.
Got it. So does your team train the sales reps for Stryker, or their training department will handle all of it?
It varies. It really depends. If the solution that we're providing is relatively simple and straightforward, they may provide that on their own. If it's a little bit more complex and the sales rep is going to be demoing our product as a combination of their medical device product, then yes, we can provide training as well. We generally do whatever the OEM or the medical device company in this particular instance wants to do.
Got it.
We can do it.
So your sales team, they're going around and they're trying to get as many Strykers, Medtronics, Boston Scientifics out there as possible.
They better be. They better not even be listening to this podcast right now.
So this is a remote position then?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So essentially there's basically two ways this goes, right? So the medical device companies have a pretty consistent development cycle in the space that they're in. So if you let's say for another example, let's say you're an ultrasound company. You are a manufacturer of field ultrasound systems or even ultrasound systems in a hospital. You're usually releasing a product every so often, maybe every 3 years, every 5 years, every 7 years, there's an end of life cycle, right? So usually once you've launched one, you're already working on the next gen, right? And so those teams that are doing that will sometimes organically engage, right? We may not be aware of that next gen situation, or perhaps it's a competitive situation, what have you, and they may come to us, or maybe they keep it quiet. A lot of times these are very confidential programs because the competition is so fierce. Right. So they'll be very quiet and they'll engage us very quietly and privately and want to talk to us about a program that we have to stay confidential about. And alternatively, my guys are proactively going out to these organizations and proactively talking about what's available, new changes, looking at market trends to say, hey, here's a way that you could approach this and improve what you offer to the market and help them get to market perhaps in a more speedy fashion, which often translates into many millions of dollars in revenue advantage for the medical device company.
Wow. So is there a specific field that you guys specialize in when it comes to the type of device that you're supporting?
I would say no. I think we're definitely the market leader in this space and have been for about 45, 50 years now. Wow. So we're well established across all of them. And so from that perspective, our product mix is pretty well diverse across all areas, whether it's imaging, whether it's patient monitoring, whether it's, patient interaction, patient education, endoscopy, surgical navigation. I mean, it runs the gamut.
This goes on. Yeah.
It's essentially every medical device we can provide a solution for.
Wow. That is fantastic. So then, I'm curious to know how many players are in this space. You guys are the market leader. Is it a crowded space? Is it like medical devices where there's, so many companies per field or what?
Yeah, I think it's pretty competitive. It's definitely in the 20s to 50s. With the immersion of the Asia Pacific market and China always wanting to enter and copy in many ways a lot of things that are successful. There's a lot of new, I guess you would call them sort of lower tier entrants into the market that are trying to take on maybe smaller projects or lower cost sort of things that maybe some of the other established players don't really focus on. So it has become congested. That said, I think that from a complete solutions provider perspective, and by that, I mean the solution, the design, the development, the high quality engineering, the high quality manufacturing, all of the regulatory support that many of our customers are critically assigned to and regulated by, being very understanding of that, operating within that, good manufacturing practices, good laboratory practices, manufacturing, all of that, American made in many cases, which is a new and big thing for a lot of medical device companies now are trying to move away from, geopolitically challenged areas to improve their position. Yeah.
No, that's fascinating. Okay, so let's I have so many questions, but let's talk about that for a second, because that's interesting. So when did companies start to move away from? When did somebody start to become more American made specific? When did that?
Yeah, certainly COVID has unfortunately, sometimes tragedies expose business continuity issues. COVID was certainly part of it, and then obviously in the case of Asia Pacific, where the realities are many manufacturers leverage those areas for lots of reasons that maybe aren't part of this conversation, but are there. China and Taiwan and the South China Sea area, as we all know, if we're following the news, geopolitically, there's a lot of, I don't want turmoil is necessarily the right word, but there's a lot of stuff happening there that make customers concerned about business continuity, and not only the business continuity, but just the political sort of position that it potentially sends if you are manufacturing there. Right. There's that possible
The optics.
The optics that
the
you
optics
maybe
matter.
perhaps condone what's happening there or whatever. And so companies want to take a non-political or apolitical stance in those circumstances. But the challenge many customers face is they love the idea, right? Hey, let's re-onshore this manufacturing, right? It's lovely. But we all know one of the challenges is that manufacturing in the United States generally is expensive.
Very
the cost
expensive.
of labor is higher,
Absolutely.
for many, many reasons. So they tend to have to balance, okay, we're probably not going to see cost improvement necessarily, but we are going to see, as you mentioned, those optics and what does that do for our company from a political or a marketing perspective? Yeah.
Would you say that in the short term, you still have seen an increase in revenue with the focus being on American, all American?
It's absolutely a huge selling feature for us.
Wow,
absolutely.
that's awesome.
No question. Yeah, even if it's partial, right? So we're unique in that, maybe not totally unique, but we were the first, I believe, to be unique in that we have hybrid models, right? So we do have offshore ability to manufacture. So we can even do a hybrid situation where, for the most part, it's us that's manufactured it. Perhaps we get some components or whatever from a lower labor area or one of our outside the U.S. plants, but it's still a made in America product, and we build it, assemble it, ship it, manufacture most of it or all of it from here. Just kind of depends on what the customer is looking for.
Now, just out of pure curiosity, the lower tier that you guys still decide to work with, are they not customary, like not China, not I don't know, not Russia? Are they certain? Like what? Give us some idea of what countries they are.
Well, we have an international presence, so we have capabilities in Japan, we have capabilities in Taiwan, we have capabilities in the Netherlands, in Europe, and America, and then also, and those are our direct either owned locations or are, we are their, 95% of their manufacturing is for us, even if we don't own them necessarily.
Got it.
And then we also have what we would call our second tier suppliers that might be all over the world. I mean, they could be basically anywhere as long as they can provide, and we've audited a quality plant that meets our requirements, that produces a quality of product that's equal to the standard that we produce ourselves.
Sure. And this is just kind of an offshoot question too. So China was the leader in this for a long time, and things have gotten a little interesting and strained when it comes to, like you said, the geopolitical and the optics. Is Japan becoming a bigger and more important player, or is that not really happening?
Yeah, I don't see that. They're becoming to a degree larger on the customer space, not so much on the manufacturing side. I think Taiwan, Hong Kong, some of the Southeast Asia Pacific manufacturing locations are continue to be generally very high quality tolerance, ability manufacturing, rapid prototyping, things like that are of tremendous import to our customers is very good. And they understand the American and European requirements of the FDA and the EU. And so the ability for them to execute at a similar quality level without a ton of rework, without a lot of other additional requirements from us is still very high.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Talk to us about the sales team.
Yeah.
What type of sales reps do you have? And let me give you some context around that. Sure. I guess what I'm asking is, can someone that's new to sales get on an OEM sales team for GCX Corporation and be trained and be a thriving sales rep? Or is it you guys are only looking for people that have experienced medical sales at some degree and they've been in the OR? Talk to us a little bit about what does the sales team look like and how do you get into this kind of sales specifically?
Sure. I would say, for my team currently with the customers that we're calling on at the level, it would not be somebody who does not have sales experience or who does not have, a technical background, whether it's somewhat related to biology or engineering or biomedical engineering or biomechanical engineering or, something along those lines. And that's primarily due to the fact that the call point here is relatively high. So we're talking to, if it's a mid-level or a C-tier sort of medical device company, you're potentially dealing directly with the CEOs, the vice presidents, the chief technical officers. And if it's a tier one, multi-billion dollar, a Stryker, you're at the VP level. You're talking to, these are experienced high level people that have an expectation of experience on our end to deliver what they're looking for. So we would be looking for people that have some years of experience, for sure. Direct OR experience is not necessarily critical. It's certainly helpful because the devices that, again, as I mentioned earlier, that we support are going directly into the OR and into the patient room. But we aren't selling those medical devices. So it's not as critical as it would be if you were doing OEM sales for, let's say, catheters or interventional products where your actual device is what you're building for somebody. Right. So it's a little different. But yeah, so I mean, I would think, realistically, if somebody has a few years of sales experience and has been progressing technically, either on their own or through the products that they've been selling to that point, then we would certainly be open to looking at someone like that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then with your customers, are you guys, how is the landscape for this type of space? Is it we focus on the big players, the Medtronics, the Boston Scientifics, the Strykers of the world, or is it we do focus on the big players, but we spend a lot of time with the startups and all these new companies that, these days it seems like there's a new medical device company every day. So where do you guys spend the majority of your time?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's been changing quite a bit over the last few years. But I'll answer that two ways. So there's the general consensus in the sales space, and this would be relevant to most of your listeners, especially new people looking at sales, is the 80-20 rule, which many of you have already heard, which is you spend 80% of your time where, your revenue is coming from. So, 20% of your time on the other stuff, and you want to spend 80% of your time where your revenue is coming from. And so in that particular case, my team does focus the majority of their time where the revenue is primarily coming from. And depending on their territory, that may be 10 accounts or 20 accounts or 5 accounts or what have you. And that changes, right, as revenue and projects increase, because this is a project-based market as opposed to just a recurring revenue sales market. So I would say that, anywhere from 50 to 80% of their time is going to be spent expanding, growing, deepening, widening the situation with their primary accounts, which are generally those larger customers. Mm-hmm. That said, to your point, new medical device companies are popping up all the time. One of the things that's been a huge shift over the last, let's say, decade in this space has been that most of these medical device companies are tending to farm out wherever possible R&D, because the cost for R&D is so incredibly high. So they'll make very big decisions about what they want to maintain and invest in internally versus what they're going to allow to go out to, say, a design and development firm or a contract manufacturer, or even just an outside supplier partner like myself. And so as a function of that, we have to behave in a way that is very cognizant of that. So we do work a lot with new companies that are getting started, because at the end of the day, what we find is most of those new guys that are coming along generally are going to be acquired, or their goal is to be acquired or licensed, that product into one of the larger companies. Right. Yeah. And so as you can kind of follow the breadcrumbs there, if we're the manufacturer for them at that point, it's very likely that the medical device company, when they acquire them or license it, will maintain the continuity of that manufacturer. So we would then carry on.
As we discuss more about the OEM space, it sounds like a sales rep just can have, a field day with opportunities, because so much is happening in the med sales space, and there's so many ways you guys can service your customers. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that is probably the most attractive, there's a number of things, but I would say probably one of the most attractive things about this type of sales is that you're never selling the same thing. Mm-hmm. Every application, every device you're talking to is different in one day. I mean, you could literally be talking to a company about a surgical navigation program in one place. You could be talking about a heart implant device program in another day. You could be talking about a fetal monitoring program or a patient monitoring or a telemedicine, patient integration, all in a day's work, with your different accounts. You're never talking, you don't have to keep grinding that same product.
Right. That same product message. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So the mix is really, really good. And as a result, the people that you're talking to, the level of technicality that you get into, the passion you actually get to deal with these people who are developing this stuff.
Yeah.
Many of these people, this is their legacy. They've developed some new technology, and it's going to market to save lives. And this is their thing. This is what they're going to hang their career hat on. And you get to be involved and help them bring that to a reality. It's super, super cool.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of fun to be had doing this. 100%.
So, where do your reps come from? Are they previous med device reps? Are they people like we talked about earlier that are in a completely different industry and they're trying to make a switch? Are they engineers? Are they, other kind of technicians? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my team currently at GCX is relatively small. And a couple of them, one is an engineer who came into sales. Another one was not in sales, and this was his first opportunity. Worked his way up. This was I should say that GCX was a family-owned and operated company, started about 50 years ago. Were recently acquired by private equity. So a number of people, exceptional tenure here. It's kind of actually fascinating that people have been here for as long as they have. And then I do have a guy on my team that came into GCX that predates me, who came in from the financial services industry, but had connections with GCX, worked his way in. Yeah, so really varied. And then I have a guy who's just a true sales guy. It's a really interesting, diverse mix. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're here to know about Sean Pitts. Okay. So let's go back down memory lane and take us back to Okay. So take us to college. Okay. Tell us, was the dream for Sean, one day I am going to be director of sales for OEM, or did we have a completely different ambition?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So no, I think it's fair to say that sales was not my goal. In fact, I had some very high level business parents. And I think in some ways that's what you need to science.
You can't. I'm not letting you get away with that. High level business parents means what?
Yeah, just so at the time, this is going back a ways, but vice president of HR, semiconductor industry. Nice. Doing extremely well. Another guy ran basically semiconductor fabrication plants. So I mean, these are people that that were very high level on the business side, and I was very much into the science side. And so, really want to study biology, and ultimately my goal, I wanted to go to med school. That was really kind of the plan. And, so I was, went through college, did all of what I needed to do for the most part to be prepared for pre-med, all the biology classes, physiology, all that stuff. Loved it. Interned at a couple of hospitals in the neurology department just to kind of see what life would be like down the road. And then, eventually, that kind of wasn't going to work out for a number of reasons. And then I was like, well, that's okay. I can deal with that. I still want to be somehow attached to science. I want to be able to, whether it's working with patients or science or doctors, I want to be in that space. I mean, that just had to be where I was going. So I decided I was going to go to grad school. And in order to do that and improve grades and all that other stuff, I decided to do some work at a pharmaceutical company in a lab and get some practical laboratory experience. So I worked at a now defunct pharmaceutical company in San Diego and did benchtop research in a couple of different pharmacology models for about 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that led to sales. Strangely enough, that's it. That's where it happened. For those of you that work in a lab or whatever now, the sales reps come in. A lot of times the scientific folks don't really want to deal with the sales reps, right? It's like, I don't want to talk to
I started in the lab too, Sean. I remember. Okay. I did.
Right. Yeah. So, everybody would scatter. I don't
right.
Blah, blah. So I was the guy that was like, all right, hey, if you want to ask for discounts and we want to get special deals, you got to give the guy the time. He's trying to help us out. Yeah. So I was the one, right? And so as a function of building those relationships as a lab manager for our group and stuff like that, I eventually befriended a number of different reps, and a couple of them were like, dude, what are you doing in here, man?
You need to get on the other side.
Get outside. You can travel. You can set your own schedule.
Right.
Decide how much money you make. You don't have to wait for your 3% a year, all that stuff. And it sounded super attractive. As a young guy, I was like 23 at the time.
Oh man, you're jumping at that.
Yeah, I was like, this sounds
Let's
great.
go.
Yeah. And so one of the guys was like, hey man, give me your resume. I'm gonna talk to my boss. We're looking to add a guy. You can even just come try it. Just come try it for like 4 weeks, 8 weeks, see what happens. And so I did. And I, the bug bit, and I've been just progressively doing that ever since. It's been about almost, I hate to say it, but almost 30 years since then.
Wow. Time flies, right?
Yeah, man. It's pretty crazy.
Okay. So a couple questions. So let's go back.
Yeah.
Still, I want to stay there for a second.
Sure.
Said that medicine, you opted not, you don't have to get into the details, but can you give us like, what was one of the most primary reasons that made you say, I don't want to go the physician track. I'm going to go a different track?
Yeah. I mean, I think at the time, just from, some family things that were going on, and given the amount of time and money that was going to take to do, I think, the reality of that sort of settled in back then. Gotcha. And it was like, okay, I don't know that's within the realm of possibility. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then as a lab manager, as you're building this relationship, as it keeps sending you to the side, did you kind of have your eye on a space, or you were just like, did you apply to many places? Did somebody pull you in and you took the first opportunity that was presented? Give us a little bit more about how that actually
you mean
happened.
As far as getting into the lab itself?
Yeah, leaving the lab and going into a sales role.
Oh, from there. Oh no, I had zero intention of doing that. None at all.
Oh wow.
And it was I was, like I said, I was happy with the work as far as, the pharmacological models that I was responsible for and producing the data for and all of that, and submitting my papers and all all that stuff at the time. I was thoroughly enjoying that. It was intellectually stimulating. It was super challenging. I was using all I knew about biology and physiology and pharmacology and everything. It was great. Mm-hmm. But then, like I said, as I built those relationships, it really was, in fact, they'd come to me about it a couple different times. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not a sales guy. It's just not my thing. I don't,
Right.
It's like going to the dark side, right? Academia, going commercial, not doing that. And I think, what was the I remember. So the driver was, I actually had a little bit of a falling out, in the sense that it was annual review time, right? It was a busy group, this particular group, and there were a couple of people that were more educated. At the time, I just had a BA. There were some people in there that were, had their masters or were PhD candidates or whatever. And I was producing way more data, doing way more stuff. And I ended up starting to become a little disenfranchised with it. Well, here's your raise and thank you very much. And meanwhile, someone else got more, that kind of stuff. And meanwhile, sales guys are in my ear, right? Dude, you know how much money you can get? You know how much I'm going to make on this, whatever I just sent you? I'm like,
right.
So like $100. I'm like, $100 just for that one box of things, making $100 on that? I'm like, all right, I'll listen to you now.
That is, you know what? It doesn't get any clearer than that. I love that story. That makes so much sense. It was a natural progression, really. I mean, it just made sense.
Yeah. It did.
Yeah. Okay. So you got, your career is pretty, I'd like to say that you moved pretty quickly in up certain ranks, and you got a lot of leadership experience. But your longest stint was with Trifoli Imaging,
right?
And you're vice president of global sales and marketing.
Yep.
And if you can talk about that, like what put you in that position, number one, and then what did you learn from that position? That why did you leave, and what did you take, and whatever learnings you got from there, what did you learn from that position that you were able to take to your next one?
Sure. Yeah. So what got me into that position over time, one of the things that was, one of the things that drove me pretty heavily in my career is I started out pretty much at the bottom, right? So I started out lab sales. So I was literally the guy back in the day when you could do this openly. I was walking the halls at the NIH, or even biotech companies, when you could have an appointment with one person and then you were the guy and you got to, walk the halls and sell tips and tubes and gloves and centrifuges and all that sort of stuff. And so I just ground that out. and did that. And, my goal the entire time was I want to get as close to the patient, as close to the doctor, as high up as I can. And I felt that the value there would be by selling something that mattered more. So, and was more complex. So I could, intellectually, I always wanted to be stimulated. I could get bored easily, right? So it was like, all right, tips, tubes, gloves, consumables, reagents. I mean, that's very cool. It just wasn't something that really grabbed me.
Right.
And so as I got into equipment more technical things, I got into imaging. And initially it was like, fluorometric imaging and cytometry imaging and cell imaging and things like that. And eventually it got to anatomical imaging. So, whether it was ultrasound or SPECT, PET, CT, what have you. And I spent almost 20 years in that space. And so I eventually, through focusing on more complex and more challenging equipment, and even new technology, working on bringing something new, taking risks. That was the other thing that was really big to me, is like, I was young. I could deal with, hey, I know it's a startup. Maybe it's looking a little sketchy. Maybe they're not super well funded, but I can do it. They want to launch this new product. I saw the value in it. I felt like I knew how to speak to it. I felt like I knew who would want to see it, and I'd push it. Right. So that was a big thing. And so over time, I was very successful in doing that. I was able to repeat that success. And so Trifoil, which had previously been a company called Bioscan, where I was acquired and merged. I was, I believe, top 1 or 2 or 3 at the worst, depending on the year, sales rep. And then over time, I got responsibility to try to launch products for them internationally. And so when I did that, that afforded me the opportunity to establish and develop the ability to figure out how to do international distribution management and to find distributors in those countries and train them and bring them up and teach them how to sell this stuff. And so as that was further and further successful, it just sort of afforded me to move up the ranks of more responsibility. And so that's how I ended up as the head of sales and marketing for them at a certain point. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. As far as leaving and what I learned, leaving for the most part, there were a number of things there. Most often, what had happened is the company was acquired, I think, multiple times. And so the business model was changed. Product rationalization happened that didn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Got it.
There were just a number of, let's call it creative differences, right? That just didn't seem to make sense. And as most salespeople know, if you're good at what you do, you're always marketable, and you're always making sure that you're marketable.
Yep.
And if you have a track record of success, you're generally being asked to do what you do elsewhere, because everybody could use the help.
Right.
Yeah. So the opportunities did afford themselves for that. So that's why I left. They're still in business. They have a great product. It's called the Insight Flect CT. It's a very, very cool, novel technology.
Wow.
And it's super cool. So I stayed in that space for a while, and then just sort of had sold everything and wanted to move closer to the patient. We only got so far, and so I wanted to move into direct medical device manufacturing, so that I was directly impacting exactly what happened to the patient. So
Gotcha. And then ultimately it led you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So switching gears, how do you make this all work? Do you have a family? Do you have kids? How do you balance all this success with a social life?
Yeah, so that's a good question. That's developed as well over time. I do have kids. My kids are older now. I've got a 20-year-old who's finishing up college. I have about to be 29-year-old. He's off doing his thing. He's in marketing.
Okay.
He lives in Denver. So it's just my wife and I. We've been married for 23 years. And
so the 20-year-old just left the house? Or
she's at Colorado State doing her thing. She's home now, I guess, for like another week to finish off summer. But yeah, she'll go back and finish up.
So you guys are recently empty nesters then?
Yeah, we got a little taste of that for a little bit, and then summer vacation came.
Parties every day or what?
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, I'm pretty busy with this job with travel. Right. Travel can be busy at times. Not too bad now. So yeah, but it's an adjustment period. We're getting to know each other again,
Hey, come on. That's beautiful. Let's talk about that real quick. The travel. Yeah. So this is a remote position. Your sales, I'm assuming everybody works from home, including you. Remote. are you traveling to demonstrations for products? Are you traveling to medical device seminars and things like that, or something else?
Yeah. So in my role, it's pretty diverse. So I have I kind of break it down into two things. I have my team requirements of me or demands of me, and I run that in a couple different ways. So I have an open door policy with my team. If they need me for anything, I'll travel to them or with them wherever they need to go. If there's a challenging customer or there's just some issue and they want my support or they want me to be there, then I'll travel. So I would call that team travel. Sure. We also have our quarterly meetings, and depending on how we're doing any given quarter, it might be more of a fun meeting where we do it, some great location. We bring in some sort of a training, yep. And have some kind of a meeting in that regard. And then I just have my corporate stuff, right? So if I have board meetings, if I have meetings with my boss to go over things at our corporate headquarters or at different manufacturing facilities, and then of course conferences that are relevant to our market, I'll attend those. I don't attend all of them, but I do go to some of the larger ones for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. And so with the travel that your team does, yep. How often are they actually required to actually go to a company and speak with an engineer and look at the actual product? Does that ever happen, or is everything pretty much virtual?
No, it happens a lot. I think, COVID changed the world in a lot of ways. There were pre-COVID, it was very typical to have a requirement to travel. Like if you weren't traveling 30% overnight or 50%, depending on the role or location or geography, what have you, right? And so COVID changed a lot of that in a lot of ways, not the least of which is that companies were just closed and wouldn't allow visitors. And right. that took quite some time, right, to come back. And we also learned pleasantly, I'm a big proponent in virtual meetings. I think the tools are there for you to look someone in the eye and be able to, articulate your capabilities, your value proposition, exactly. And read some body language and make an effective connection. It's never the same as in person, but it's much better than it used to be. Yeah. And I feel like there's not necessarily a reason to travel just for travel's sake. Right. But yeah, I mean, I think it's improving, especially too, as most of our customers can't be 100% remote because a lot of them are engineers. They do need to collaborate. They do need to go in. They need to grab a device. They need
to put their hands on it and
got to put Legos together, snap things together, figure out what works, absolutely. Test things. Yeah. Yep. And so it's great when we can be there to be that collaborative partner with them, and that's picking up. And awesome. But I do not have a hard and fast rule. I mean, I think if a territory is struggling, not enough opportunities coming in, or the revenue is down, I'll look at T&E, travel and expense budget, look at it and go, well, what's going on? I don't see you're traveling. Right. Let's talk through that. What's going on? Are you running into some roadblocks? Why aren't things happening?
So, I love that. And you're right. COVID normalized virtual meetings. Absolutely. I think they were always there, but COVID made it, a very much a thing for everybody to utilizing and made it a normal thing for everybody to continue to utilize. And that's where we are today. And we should be here. This is we're living in the future. I mean, this is, the dreams that we had when we were kids about the future is going to look like. We are here. We're in it. So it's very true. Okay. So let's talk about this and then we'll bring things to a close pretty soon here. But give us the 3 qualities a high-performing rep in this space has to have.
Okay. I mean, first and foremost, a proactive drive to win. I mean, you've got to be somebody that absolutely wants to, you know what the task is, right? I mean, that's inherent. It's implied. You need to move our products, create solutions that solve customers' problems. So you have to be somebody that absolutely wants to wake up in the morning and do that for somebody.
Can't wait to win.
Yeah. Just, you have to win it. I know a lot of sales managers don't necessarily like to hear this, but I agree. I think you need to be money motivated. If you're in my opinion, on my team, if you aren't somebody who's driven by money, who wants to make as much as you are humanly possibly capable of making under a compensation program, I don't want you on my team. You don't work for free. Straight. None of us work for free. If money's just kind of, money's okay.
I could use it.
Yeah, come on.
Not Sean's team.
Nope. And I'm sure your listeners, if they want to go into medical device space, they've all heard the stories. Oh, I was the gastro rep for whatever, and my buddy does $1.5 million. I want to make that kind of money. Okay, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So some money motivation for sure, and as well. And this is very cliche, but it's super super important. You got to be somebody who listens and can process the information and turn it into an actionable response.
Right. Love it.
And I think a combination of that is there. So many people don't follow up. So many people talk and talk and talk and leave and go, "Oh, that was a great call." And I'll be like,
"Was it? What did you learn?
Yeah. What'd you get? Where are we going after this? What's the action item? What's the objective?
Right.
When's he calling you? When are you calling him? When's the next meeting? What's the pre-call plan? That kind of stuff, which some of that needs to be trained. But I think if you're money motivated, you love to win, and you can ask questions, listen, and turn it into an action. Anything else you can be taught. And
I love it.
And it's specific to what you're doing.
Hey, for those listening, write that down. That was good. Let me ask you this. Yeah. What is the range of earnings for an OEM sales rep?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, again, this is there is such a range of things you can do in this space, right? I'm on what you would call, as I mentioned, the adjunct. So not a critical device for the device. I've also been on the contract manufacturing OEM space where I'm literally making, the business end of the device. But I would say realistically anywhere from, depending on your qualifications, probably, low twos to 400,000 a year, depending on your territory and what you're doing and where you're selling.
Yep. So, awesome role to have. I love it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're gonna do one more thing here.
Okay.
And this is I want two more things. Number one, I want you to give us what's your regimen? You're waking up at 6 or 5 or, later, and you're doing what? And then what? Like, give us your not hour by hour, but just kind of give us the regimen for the day for you. How does that look?
Yeah. So for me, it's generally, it's partly dependent on, when my first meeting or call is on that given day. So I'm always up at least 2 hours before that. So if I've got an 8 a.m., I'm up at 6. If I've got a 10, I'm at 8, whatever. But I'm generally, the beginning of the day is usually a quiet period. I'm reviewing everything from the previous day, what I absolutely have to accomplish this day. And again, I break it down into two things. I have my corporate requirements of me, and then I have my team requirements of me. And I focus on that. And that's a quiet time. I'm not answering texts. That's just my time prepping for meetings, what have you. And then my day starts. And then I have usually, during the day, I have another hour or 2 hour window that's blocked as busy. My team knows I'm not busy, but it's blocked so that it's isolated time to work on anything with them. And there's always something. It's, join this customer. How do I navigate this deal? Look at this contract, that sort of stuff. And so that's generally it. When I wrap the day out, for me, it's pretty typical to go till 6 or 7, depending on I have a national role. Currently my role is not global, so I don't have too many odd things going on outside of, let's say, 7 in the morning and 7 at night. And then I'll wrap for about a half an hour, 45 minutes on, what was left open, just kind of reprioritize, for the next day.
Very cool. Thank you for that, Sean.
Yep.
And then last but not least, our lightning round. I'm going to ask you 4 questions. You have less than 10 seconds to answer. Are you ready?
I guess. Let's go.
All right. First question. Yeah. What is the best book you've read in the last 6 months?
Probably just rehashing How to Influence People, Win Friends and Influence People Again. I always refer to that one.
That's a classic.
Classic, Yeah, but it'd been years.
Yeah, I like it. Best movie or TV show you've seen in the last 6 months?
Probably Ted Lasso.
Man, I still haven't seen it, but everybody's talking.
Yeah, probably Ted Lasso. You know what? There is another one. I don't know how your listeners feel. There's a Queer Eye, More Than a Makeover show. It's like a reality show that my wife turned me on to. Yeah. It's the Fab Five, these 5 guys, and they go and they help somebody who just needs to get their life in order in
Right.
all
No,
areas.
is it just appearance, or is it like their actual?
No, their whole life.
Oh, wow.
Their career, their appearance,
wow.
their home, their personality, not personality, but like their personal relationships.
Yeah.
5 guys that are all focused on all these things. And they're just incredibly heartwarming. They're incredibly well done. You just root for the person. You're like, go person. You're gonna kill
that's
it now,
cool.
you know? Yeah, it's just really well done. And also it's been good to sit and do that, you know, watch those with my wife and
that's awesome.
laugh and stuff. So that would be another one. Yeah.
I might have to write
Check it out. Yeah, for all your fans out there. It's a cool show.
That's awesome.
I have to say, I would have never watched it on my own. But.
Right. Best meal you've had in the last 6 months? The item and restaurant.
Ooh, item. Oh, wow. Item and restaurant.
Oh, wow. This is tough.
You know, I got to say, right here in Temecula, I have a Chinese restaurant that I love called Chef K.
Okay.
I have their house spicy basil chicken.
Okay.
That's just incredible.
Oh man, next one's
all over the world. I've had Chinese food a lot of places.
Wow.
I'm saying it's not on par, but it's real close.
I'm sold. All right. And then last but not least, what's the best experience you've had in the last 6 months?
Well, I got 2.
Okay.
If that's okay. So I have two things in my personal life that are big to me. So I'm a big snowboarder.
All right.
And I love having my son living in Denver and my daughter going to Colorado State University. It's
oh man, you're going to be on the slopes. Yes, you are.
I had no influence on any of that. But my daughter and son and I this winter at Breckenridge just had a phenomenal week together. Awesome. We went multiple times, but just one in particular. My wife doesn't snowboard, but we went. Weather amazing, and just having just a completely in the moment with them. Just sheer joy, having a blast. And one of the most beautiful places on earth was just great. Lots of great pictures and fun. And then I'm in a band. I have one of my creative outlets. I'm in a high stress environment like I'm in. I have a band that I front. We're just a local, rock and roll cover band here in Temecula area. And so we've really started heavily gigging. And so in the last 6 months, we've had a number of large gigs. We have a really big one tomorrow afternoon, actually.
Hey, okay.
And just getting in front of 500-600 people and rocking out and having the crowd go crazy. I can't really describe how amazing that is.
Oh, of course. How big are these crowds?
Yeah, they vary. We have a couple places we've been playing regularly. It's maybe 200 to 500.
Wow, no, that's significant. That's a crowd.
The one tomorrow is supposed to be around that. Yeah, so it's been fun, man. It's a great creative outlet. Love it. Yeah.
What's the band? What's the name of the band?
It's my dad's band. Yeah, like my dad owns this band. Yeah, we thought it'd be funny to have people go, hey, request us and go, hey, my dad's band's playing. Oh, your dad's got a band? No, it's just
What kind of music?
It's all basically anywhere from 80s to 2010 rock and roll. So we're playing, Billy Idol and, the Colts.
It's all cover, or you guys got your own stuff too?
Yeah, all covers. Yeah, just having fun with covers. Just playing
we
with
can't
people
find you
here
on
and dance
Spotify?
too. Say again?
Can't find you on Spotify?
No. If I put our stuff up, it immediately gets pulled down for copyright.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for those listening, my dad's band, we'll definitely keep an ear out for that.
Yeah, and we're online. Yeah,
absolutely. And then how else can people find you, Sean?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So my first name is Sean, Sean, last name Pitts, Pitts. And I should say, by the way, LinkedIn used to have the ability to sort of be a mentor for people. And I do that. I actively do it now. I've helped people get jobs. I help people negotiate positions, help them, work through. Hit me up. I'm happy to help. If you're looking to break in, happy to help you do that too. So hit me up anytime. But yeah, you can look me up on LinkedIn, probably easiest way.
Absolutely. Sean, it was fantastic having you on the show.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Can't wait to see the wonderful things you're going to be continuing to do with GCX Corporation.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
What I really enjoyed about this episode is just another example of how dynamic the medical sales industry is. Everyone's heard of the traditional pathways in medical sales, and it's really cool to get a guest on the show that has just a bit of a different spin to it all. So, some of you might have been listening to this and thinking to yourselves, wow, one day I want to do what Sean Pitts is doing, or I want to be on Sean Pitts' team. But you're not even sure where to start. You might be listening to this episode or many other episodes and thinking to yourselves, I know I want to be in medical sales. I know I want to be in healthcare sales. I want to do something that impacts patient lives. I want to do something that's going to reward me with the income I believe I deserve for the hard work I put out. And you're asking yourself, how do I do something that is going to set me up with an entire career? And you've heard this episode. Well, if you've listened to any other episode, then you already know what I'm going to say. And if you haven't, here it is. We have a company called Evolve Your Success that specializes in making sure you, the listener that wants to be in healthcare sales, gets into healthcare sales within a pathway that suits them. A lot of people don't even know where to start. A lot of people have heard different things and thought that, maybe medical sales is too much because I have to work all the time. Or here's the one I hear a lot: travel all the time. Or maybe medical sales is too much because of the long working hours. And the reality is that's only so true depending on the field. There's fields in medical sales that you're absolutely right. You will be working all hours if you want, like trauma. And even then, there's a lifestyle there that can appease the lifestyle you want. And there's positions that will have you only working between 8 and 5. Everything's out there when it comes to the medical sales industry. And again, I'm talking about all of it. Healthcare sales in general, pharmaceutical, medical device, supply, testing, diagnostic, capital sales, you name it. So if this is what you really want, then stop wondering, stop wishing, keep listening, but let's take action. Let's go to evolveyoursuccess.com. Let's fill out an application, and let's have you talking to one of our account executives and get you to exactly where you want to be. As always, we do our best to bring you innovative guests that are doing things differently in the medical sales space. So make sure you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.